I want to talk today about spoken language features. Whenever you are analysing a transcript between two interlocutors or more, it's important to comment on all of the different aspects that spoken language takes. So, first of all, let's talk about topic shifts. Now these, you need to identify these in a transcript, and you need to be able to identify the line numbers where these topic shifts occur. So what are topic shifts? Topic shifts are the points where speakers move from one topic to another. Now these are marked by key points in the spoken discourse. So you might have one speaker that introduces a new topic. This person is the dominant speaker in that moment. Now there may be examples when one speaker dominates the entire discourse. Have you met any of those? The speakers though can change roles throughout. So although new topics appear to be random in a conversation, the participants or the interlocutors intend their introduction to be a natural pathway into a new topic. So what you need to do is look for those points where the topic shift and who is the dominant speaker. So a tip, in informal conversation, the main topic may not come first. So always read the entire transcript first and note where the main topic occurs. The other thing to look for and comment on when you're doing an analysis of a spoken script are adjacency pairs. Now these follow each other and they create a recognisable pattern. They can be contributed by different speakers, so they're always sort of a question and answer form. And they always conform to a recognisable pattern, so they're easy to identify, pick out and comment on, and also for you to say what they're doing and why they're there. So it might add to the coherency of the text, or it also might reveal something about the interlocutors themselves. So for instance, can I sit here? The answer would be, of course, or no, an adjacency pair. Do your homework. In a minute, just don't nag me. These question and answer forms are really easy to identify, and they're good for you to identify perhaps early on. If you're sitting there really worried about your transcript in a SAC or in an exam and you just can't think, look for the adjacency pairs. There's something you can start writing about to get those juices flowing. The other thing is turn taking. So this is another element in spoken discourse, and you'll be able to identify it in the transcript. Remember always to give the example and the line number. So speakers are very adept at taking turns and manipulating turns. These transitions from one speaker to another often just happen very smoothly. We take turns almost instinctively, like we know when the end of the sentence is coming and we know when we are to respond. We're very aware of the different frameworks that we use to speak in, and we know when our turn ends and when it begins. Although overlapping may occur, it doesn't last long, and it's usually an indication of either excitement or enthusiasm, or it could be familiarity, where the two speakers overlap saying the same thing because they're just so aware of each other and so familiar with each other and how they speak. So our knowledge of adjacency pairs help us to know when it is our turn. So the knowledge of the structure of grammar as well is non-verbal cues, and these are indicators. For instance, we know when the tone drops, the sentence is going to end and it's our turn. So turn taking is another very important feature that you can identify in your transcript. Now also, the other thing to talk about in spoken transcripts are face needs, positive and negative. Language has so many uses that go well beyond the simple communication or the simple words that we speak. It can be used to entertain, to convey abstract ideas, and to mould one's perspective. So a face need is one's sense of their own social value, and that is experienced during social interactions. Now there are two types of face needs, and I think where students really get tripped up is trying to identify whether it's positive or negative face at all times. That's not necessarily needed. So there are two types of face needs, positive face needs and negative face needs. Now negative face needs is not necessarily a bad thing. Positive face needs refers to the need, our need, to be part of a group, to feel accepted, to feel needed, to be liked by others. Negative face needs describes the will to do what we want to do with freedom and independence. It's our desire to be an individual. So it's not a negative thing. And sometimes students get tripped up by calling it positive or negative, but they're the terms we're stuck with. Now, if you're using Kate Burridge's book, you can reread her section on this on pages 8 to 10. And then use a transcript to try and identify the face needs. There'll always be opportunities for you to identify face needs. Another thing to be aware of too is your audience. Always comment back on your audience. There's a primary audience, a secondary audience, and sometimes there's a tertiary audience. So for instance, in a public address, you'll have the immediate people who are interested in that address, and they could be a whole mixture of people who have come to hear a particular speaker or a part of that group, or and then there's also the media listening to report, but then it also could be broadcast publicly. So you've got this other wider audience. So when you're looking at a transcript, think about who is this message for? Who is this speaker connecting to in this moment? Now, of course, in any spoken transcript, there are openings and there are closings. These are distinct features. And again, you always give an example and a line number. Now, if two interlocutors are social equals, then they may use a neutral starting point to initiate their conversation. They may also, though, then go on to making comments about themselves or how they think or how they feel or how they were affected by something. So the focus can shift onto the speaker. Also, the other person is listening. Perhaps they're saying something to that person, to the listener. So the focus is on them. And of course, vocatives are really common. Hey there, hi everyone. They can be helpful to personalize the encounter. One of the transcripts in the VCE past exams is the Missy Higgins one. She starts off with the term, hey everyone. So this is a personal greeting. She wants to personalize her talk. She's talking to her fans who she is generating some intimacy with. So she's addressing their face needs, the need to belong together. Other things could be used, names, titles, an evaluative judgment, dear, sweetie, son, whatever it is. So those openings are also something you should comment on in your transcripts. And of course, if we have openings, we also have closings. So these sum up the exchange, okay? And they provide the reason to end the conversation. So that's what you comment on in your script, how the conversation concludes. So self and other related comments are common, but neutral tokens are not so common. So closings are often repeated as the speaker uses delaying tactics too. Perhaps the other person doesn't want to end the conversation there, or they don't feel that they exhausted the topic. So what happens in a closing, they might refer back earlier, and instead of it closing or the attempt to close, it might go on a little bit longer. So these are all things that you can comment on in how the speakers are interacting, how the discourse is flowing. There's also speaker moves. So you're framing your openings and your closings, creating an overall structure to the conversation. There's initiating, where the topic is established. That's something you can comment on. Who's initiating? What's their relationship? You can talk then about social variation, idiolex, gender, power relationships. There's also focusing. The comments specify the direction of the topic and how that topic is going to develop. This can be set up at any point in the conversation. There's also supporting follow-up. It encourages the topic to continue. So maybe you've got another interlocutor comes in and wants to change the topic. And now if they change the topic, they're the dominant speaker, the topic changes. But perhaps the people who are already talking don't want that topic to change. So there's a supporting or a follow-up or a review or a restating, and that helps the topic to continue. There's also challenging. That interrupts the topic and introduces a new topic without mutual agreement from the other speakers. That can happen when someone new enters the group. Perhaps they come up with exciting news. Perhaps they're not aware that people were already talking and they just come in saying, hey, guess what happened? So they're all things that you can comment on. They're called speaker moves. So look for these in your transcripts. And of course, comment on prosodic features. Now, what students do is they only comment on prosodic features. That's not good enough. That's not going to get you up into the higher assessment levels. But of course, you do need to comment on them. So the function in speech, these prosodic features function like punctuation does in written speech. So they divide the spoken utterances into smaller units. And detecting them does take expertise. It's not really good enough to say, you know, low intonation, rising intonation, etc. You really need to analyze them as part of the whole transcript and really see what's happening here and what is it revealing about the speakers and what is it revealing about their interaction. We also have hedging in conversations. Now, hedge is a word or phrase used in a sentence to express ambiguity, probability, perhaps they're indecisive, and so they will try then to avoid stating something in a harsh way, or perhaps they don't wish to be too confronting. So these hedging, you can always identify it if someone's being cautious. They don't want to inflame, they don't want to start an argument, they don't want to offend anybody, they don't want to accuse somebody. So for an example, if someone says, there seems to be a problem here, can we discuss it? Rather than, you're a problem and you need to listen. Okay, that would not be hedging. So hedging, look for that in a conversation where people are just trying to be attentive to other people's needs and face needs. Now in spoken transcripts, of course there's shortenings where loss of part of a word, or people are speaking and it loses the endings of a word. For instance, nothing. Approx instead of approximately. So people tend to shorten words when they're talking to each other, especially too if they're getting excited or there's a lot of familiarity between the speakers, and it's certainly not in a formal setting. So it will occur in casual, informal, excited speech or rapid speech. That's what you comment on. Now, intonation. Students, I suppose, more often than not, will always pick out intonation because it's easy to identify with the symbols. But intonation patterns vary. So instead of just saying, oh, that's indicating the end of a sentence, look over the whole transcript. See if there's a pattern there in the way this speaker uses intonation. So it may vary, and each exchange reinforces meaning in some way. By varying intonation, speakers can convey their mood, their attitude, surprise, excitement, pleasure. So look at what's happening in your transcript. Don't just settle for saying, oh, it rises intonation or it lowers here and that's the end of a sentence. It's more than that. You want to look for patterns. So for example, no, the word no could be indignant, it could be doubtful, or it could be a surprise. No, really? Did that happen? So look at the words. The way the intonation is labelled there gives you an indication of how that word is said, and then that gives you an indication of what is meant by that word. So how is that word being used? So matter of fact, I don't think so. Intonation has both a functional and also its semantic uses. So if you're commenting on intonation, comment on its function, but also comment on the semantics. And it marks also grammatical boundaries and structures turns, which I think most students are pretty adept at identifying. It's these other areas that need to be brought into your analysis. Now, pitch. High, low, and anywhere in between the two. Pitch can vary across the transcript and across speakers. So look at how a speaker varies their pitch, high, mid, and low. And why? At what point is it happening? Is there a topic change there? What else is shifting in the conversation? Don't just settle for identifying it. Anyone can identify it if they've got the legend there. What you need to do is analyze. So changes in pitch are linked often to meaning and also to the way the speakers are relating. This is what you comment on. When you identify in a line where pitch is happening or a pattern, this is what you need to comment on. So look at the raised pitch. It could be, oh, enthusiasm. A lowered pitch could be a finale to the conversation, or it could reveal how the two are relating. the excitement, the emotion behind it. So don't just settle with a simple identification and a statement. Now, stress. Stress is also, there are stressed words and unstressed words in the English language, and this is linked directly to rhythm. It also marks out words of importance, or perhaps a theme, or perhaps an idea that the one speaker wants to ensure the other speaker knows this is something that they should focus on, they should pay attention to. So a change of stress can indicate a change of meaning. For instance, I made ice cream. The focus on made, not on ate or bought. It's on the making. If you then change the stress and place it on the I made ice cream. The focus is on me and not anyone else, meaning perhaps that was really special for me. Maybe it's the first time that I made it. So the focus shifts depending on where the stress is. I made ice cream focuses on the ice cream and not another type of product. So you can see from that simple sentence, when you shift the stress in different parts of the sentence, it conveys a different meaning. This is what you need to be picking up in your transcripts. Additionally now, there's volume and pace. So volume can be loud, soft, increasing, decreasing. Pace can be fast, slow, faster, slower. And all of these things influence the meaning being conveyed. So reflect the relative importance of what the speakers are saying, and that's what you need to comment on if you're picking up on volume and pace in a transcript. What effect is it having? What are the speakers trying to emphasize? What are they trying to convey to one another? What's important to them? Why are they doing it? Which leads us to tone. Now, tone's unit's role is to organize the discourse. They direct the listener to pay attention to the structure of an utterance, a clause, elements, or new information. So also comment on the tone. How is this organizing the discourse? What role is it playing? And of course, there are pauses and there are rhythm. In informal speech, these are acceptable in spoken discourse where the manner is informal, to pause and think, to reflect on what you're saying, or perhaps you were stunned by it and you're trying to respond. Perhaps you're trying to find a way to express something that you're finding difficult to express. They make the rhythm of the speech uneven. Now, in formal transcripts, when the manner is formal, they're often used for a different reason. They're used to create a dramatic effect or to let a message sink in to the audience. The rhythm in formal speeches is usually regular and deliberate. So in informal, they can be just quite disruptive. In formal, they can be used for dramatic effect. Now, what sort of pauses are they? There are voiceless hesitations. There can be voiced pauses. So there's voiceless pauses and voiced pauses. There could be word searching. All of these create pauses. They can be intentional and they can be unintentional. And again, that's why it's important to read the whole transcript. How are the pauses being used here, or what are they revealing about the speakers or the interlocutors here? So a pause symbol in transcripts also can indicate the end of a sentence. So that you can see there's lots to comment on in spoken transcripts. There is a YouTube clip available, so I decided not to talk about it, but direct you to YouTube here on filled pauses, and you can locate that easily. What I wanted to also talk about though is vocal effects and paralinguistics. So these two are part of spoken speech. There's coughing, giggling, throat clearing, gestures and posture. They're the paralinguistics, facial expressions. So they are used in sort of two ways. They either reinforce or contradict meaning. So you also need to comment on those and what they're doing. How are they helping, hindering the listener or the audience? How are they being used? Here, are they unintentional? There are also non-fluency features. So these distinguish between written and spoken language. So if it's more formal speech, there's less hesitancy. Simultaneous speech, you can have a slip of the tongue or say something or mispronounce, etc. Evidence of non-fluency are often not noticed. So that leads me to the end of my little clip today. If you're interested in being tutored in English language, I've got some details there. And don't forget, please, to like, subscribe and share this video. Good luck as the exams are approaching, and good luck with any sacs that you're doing. Bye for now.